Welcome to Film Strip. These podcasts are spoiler-filled as we discuss the plots, characters, and themes of the films in review. All content used or discussed in these podcast episodes is the property of the respective owners and used under the Fair Use Act, Section 504, C2, Title 17.
Cool. I just wanted to have something to line it up with. So, all right. So, any other questions before we get started? Not even. All right, here we go. 3, 2. Welcome to Film Strip. I'm Jay, and I'm excited to welcome to the show Kelli Beards-Brink, host of the True Crime IRL podcast. Kelli, thanks for joining me in this episode of Film Strip.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
Absolutely. And we are here to review No Country for Old Men, starring Tommy Lee Jones, Javier Bardem, Josh Brolin, Kelly MacDonald, Garrett Dillahunt, Woody Harrelson, and Barry Corbin. Based on the novel by Cormac McCarthy, written and directed by Joel and Ethan Coen. Released in 2007 on a $25 million budget, grossed over $171 million at the box office, nominated for 8 Academy Awards, and took home 4: Best Picture, Best Supporting Actor for Bardem, Best Director, and Best Adapted Screenplay. So, Kelli, this was your suggestion. So, What's your background with No Country for Old Men?
Oh, man. I have big shoes to fill taking on this episode now. I'm kind of regretting it. But really what drew me to it is, I mean, I have a true crime podcast, so I talk a lot about psychopaths. Pretty much every episode has a psychopath in it, and there's no movie with a bigger psychopath than Anton Chigurh in this movie. And that's kind of what prompted me to kind of go with this movie. It's just... well, it's a great movie, too. But yeah, kind of that character, that antagonist, is kind of what brought me to it. So,
yeah, I remember seeing the trailers when this was coming out, and just the way he looks with that flop haircut and... oh,
I know that hair. I mean, all of him, and that smile, and just, he's just so, he's so creepy. So he's like a monster in human form.
Yeah. All in black. And I remember the one trailer is Woody Harrelson talking about, like, is he bad compared to the bubonic plague, and all that kind of stuff. And you just see this, and
He's
things from Coen Brothers is like, okay, I'm going to get a movie that is chock full of character actors that are going to chew up scenery. It's going to be a lot of dialogue. And there's also going to be some incredible violence. And I wasn't as familiar with the source material until after I saw this. And I sought the book out sometime later because I thought, I just want to know, how close is this to things? I'm always curious about that. And it's pretty darn close. Like this hinged right into the line. There's really only one major change that I can think of. And the one thing that stuck out to me in the movie was just how violent it was beneath all these quiet parts and stuff. And then the book is the same way. I mean, it's an incredibly violent book.
I didn't read the book. You read the book. You actually read it. But everything I've heard about it is that it's basically like the book and the movie are identical. So, yeah. Yeah,
it's more just, combining some things together and shortening stuff down. It's actually a pretty fast book. It's only about 300 pages or so. I mean, I tore through it in a day.
I should read that. Yeah.
It's definitely worth doing. But yeah, I was intrigued by this. I remember when it came out. I didn't see it in theaters. I ended up renting it and watching it and thinking, okay, this is really good. And I've seen it a couple of times, but I hadn't seen it in, gosh, it's probably been 10 years since I've even thought about it. And so, I see the thing I think I see most of it is the Tommy Lee Jones old man meme of sort of looking over the newspaper where he's just sort of like, really, at the deputy. And I've seen that run around the internet enough. And I thought, I need to go back and rewatch this movie. So you gave me a good excuse to go back and watch No Country for Old Men.
Me too. Yeah, I did the same thing. I rewatched it because when I first saw it, I think I had only seen it one time probably. And that was a long time ago. What year did that movie come out again?
2007. So it's,
okay, it's
13,
been a
14
long
years
time.
Now,
yeah, and I saw it at home like 13 years ago, and I'm kind of a different person than I was then, and I've been involved in a lot more true crime stuff and a little more, I don't know. I've grown up a little bit since I saw it last, and I thought of it totally differently this time, and it was so good.
It definitely lands differently the older you get. I can say that, being 13 years older now from when I first saw it, and just thinking about life and older parents and things like that. And I don't know, just some of it always hits a little different. And that's the cool thing about Coen Brothers movies is whether they're doing one of their big comedies like Lebowski, which we did, a while back on Film Strip here, or doing something like Fargo, which is another one of their crime things or whatever, or even something like Raising Arizona, which is sort of half true crime and half zany comedy,
Yeah.
It lands differently depending on when you see it and how old you are and sort of your station in life. And that's what makes them such interesting filmmakers.
Yeah. Yeah. They're amazing. They're like the best, but yeah. Yep.
Yeah, they're definitely among the best that America has brought out. That is for certain. And they've done some great work, but I think we should get into it here, Kelly. So I'm going to do a quick plot summary and then we'll talk about No Country for Old Men.
Okay. Sounds good.
So while hunting in the desert, Llewellyn Moss, played by Josh Brolin, finds the carnage of a drug deal gone awry. And there's one man barely alive and a suitcase with $2 million. So Moss takes the money and returns later with water for the injured man, feeling guilty for leaving him there in the first place. This, of course, tips off the other thugs, though, and Moss goes on the run. And he sends his wife, Carla Jean, to her mother's in Odessa, Texas. He ends up at a motel down in Del Rio, where Radney Foster is from, and he hides the money there. But little does he know that the Mexican cartel members are on his trail, as well as a methodical bounty hunter known as Anton Chigurh, who's already killed law enforcement and a bystander while tracking the money. Chigurh takes out the Mexicans and just misses the money before Moss retrieves it, realizing that there's a tracking module in it. And they engage in a gunfight, which spills out into the street where both are injured and they retreat to care for their wounds. Meanwhile, Sheriff Ed Tom Bell, played by Tommy Lee Jones, is on the trail and continually horrified by the carnage he uncovers. Another operative enters to offer Moss protection, but Chigurh takes him out and threatens to kill Moss's wife if he doesn't return the money. And of course, that sets Moss off as well because he's now going to go after the guy. Bell eventually approaches Carla Jean and offers to protect Moss if she'll reveal his location, but she doesn't. But her mother inadvertently reveals Moss's location to another group of Mexicans trailing them, where they track down Moss and kill him, though we don't see that on screen. Bell arrives on the scene just in time to see that happen and is compelled to retire, feeling overmatched against all of this violence. Weeks later, Carla Jean returns for her mother's funeral, and Chigurh is waiting for her. He gives her the same coin flip chance he gave a gas station attendant earlier, but she refuses, and he presumably kills her. While driving away, his car is T-boned in an intersection, but he bribes two children who were bystanders for their silence and slips away. Bell does indeed retire and reveals to his wife a dream foreshadowing his acceptance that he's content to be in his last years as credits roll. And that's really kind of the simple story. That's the neat thing about this is it's not overly complicated, and that's what I think makes it so accessible.
It's not complicated just when you're watching it with your eyes, but it's complicated as far as symbolism. Oh my word, so much symbolism.
Yeah, there is heavy in this movie, but in the fact that it is heavy, it's not overbearing. Like, I don't feel like this movie beats you over the head with that stuff. No, it doesn't. But yeah, so yeah, what do you want to get into first? I think the way to start with this one, because it is such a simple story, is let's just kind of roll through some of the characters and sort of how they work. And we got to start with Chigurh. And it blows me away that Javier Bardem was given Best Supporting Actor nod for this because he's the lead character in the damn film. Like, I know that there's lots of different ways those things get positioned and stuff by the Academy, but he has such an overwhelming presence here. And I like to do this thing when I'm watching this, especially for a movie where someone has won an award. Could anyone else have played this and done the same or done as good a job? And there's no one else I can think of. And I didn't know him from anything until this movie. And of course, now he's done James Bond and all kinds of other stuff. And he's, a more mainstream American star, but he was a big deal in Mexico and in Latin America before he ever did this. So the Coens were huge fans of his, and gosh, he's such a presence.
He is such a presence. So, but in one way, I'm like, how hard was his job going to work every day, really? Like, I mean, he didn't do a lot of talking and stuff, but nobody else could have played the role. I totally agree with you on that. But he didn't have a lot of lines to memorize. Like, that's
but every actor will tell you, like, the most fun thing to do is to play the bad guy. Quote,
unquote. Yeah, that would be great.
But especially when the bad guy doesn't have to tell you he's bad, he gets to show you how bad he is.
Right. Oh, and he shows us from that opening scene.
Yeah, poor Josh Lucas, a very young Josh Lucas, we might add, gets his throat ripped out by a pair of handcuffs.
Right. Yeah. So that was intense. That scene was amazing because you just kind of see him. He's sitting there in that chair in the background and he just rises up slowly. It kind of reminds me of like Jason or Freddy Krueger or some like character like that.
It's very
Michael Myers.
Moving.
Yes,
Yeah,
he just stalks his way over, and you just see him in the background, like moving his hands around his legs, and then. I knew that was coming, though. Didn't you just know that was coming? Yeah.
Yeah, you're like, the first guy's got to go down, right? And what's so weird is you see all of it. And that's the thing about movies like this is oftentimes you'll see the beginning of the violence, but you don't see it work out. And what I'll give the Coens credit for, and it's like this in the book too, is if you try to choke somebody to death, that is not now I've never done it personally, but just from all accounts, that is not an easy thing to do.
No,
and it takes a long time. And I appreciate the fact that they let that go on and on.
Totally. Yeah. So I've never choked anyone either, but in the true crime stories I cover, a lot of people have done that, and it does take a long time and it takes a lot of strength. And they really, in that scene, just showed it all. In fact, at the end of that struggle, Shigur's wrists are bloody from the handcuffs, and it's an intense thing. It's not just I'm just gonna hold him for a little bit and he's gonna die. No, it was like a huge struggle, and then they show the black marks from their boots struggling on the ground, and it's it's very intense. And that's the thing about him as a character that I can only compare it to, like, not that sharks are evil creatures or whatever, but they just sort of go on a mission and that's what they do. Or, he's just out there to do his job. And what we'll find out through the outworking of this plot is that he and all of these Mexican gangs that roll in and out have all been hired by the same banker person to retrieve this money, played by Stephen Root in a great cameo. I love him in anything. Yeah. He's a Coen Brothers muse, so they'll throw him in anything. But if you can't get him, they get John Goodman. Like they're almost interchangeable for the stuff they do. But they're all hired by the same one. And when Shiger ultimately kills him later, he says, like, you just picked the right tool. You don't hire all the other ones. You don't need all these other people. And what you realize is that he's kind of right. Like, he is so ruthless when he's on the trail, when he meets up with two other, old boys in the suits in the pickup truck to go look at the carnage. He checks one of the guns to make sure it's loaded and then shoots them both because he's gotten what he needed out of them. And I'm like, this guy is just a wake of death walking through. And I think that's the metaphor, is that he's like the Grim Reaper, literally. You're taking my notes. I wrote this down even because I was like, Shiger is death personified. That's what he is. Like, that character, there's so much symbolism right there. Like, he is death. He's an unstoppable force, and nothing's going to get in his way, just like the Grim Reaper. It's like, when it's their time, it's their time. And he's an efficient killing machine. That's with no soul, no thoughts in his head, really, other than get what I need and take whatever means necessary to do it.
Yeah, I mean, he's stealing cars, he's killing people. And we should talk about, like, one of his primary ways to kill people is that cattle stun gun.
That is one of the most terrifying weapons I have ever seen. It reminds me of like a science fiction thing, like from like an alien movie or something, but it's so, what it's very dehumanizing because it's a cattle gun. Like, it's not.
Well, the thing about it is, it doesn't inflict a tremendous amount of pain, and that's what you realize about him, is he's not sadistic. When he kills you, he just kills you. He doesn't torture
efficiently.
You.
He's all about efficiency.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he has to struggle with the Josh Lucas cop so much is just a means of, I didn't have anything else, so this will have to do.
Literally, that was his only weapon available at the time, so that's why it went that way. But typically he wants to be efficient, quick, painless, and not messy. Like, they're in every scene after a brutal killing, where the blood is kind of pooling around his feet and stuff. That one scene where he's on the phone after he kills
Woody Harrelson,
Woody Harrelson, and then the blood is coming near his feet. He just nonchalantly puts his feet up on the bed. And then when
Like-
he killed the people in the hotel room, like his socks got all bloody. He just threw it. Like,
he's checking his feet all the time when he walks out
All
of
the
Carla
time.
Jean's house. Which is,
Yes.
well, I always say, like, it's how you know he killed her is that he looks at his boots. You know,
That's what I was just gonna say too. Like, that's really the only indicator we have that he actually killed her is because he did what he always did and looked for blood on his boots. I was hoping he didn't kill her, but he always,
I mean, he's there to do that, though. I mean, he said, I told your husband I was going to come kill you, so I'm going to do that. You know, I mean, that's the thing is he's just a one-track machine.
It's like his own set of rules and morals that he goes by. He's like, I said I was going to do this. I stand by my word. I'm going to kill you.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you talk about like he's this unstoppable killing machine, much like a Michael Myers or Jason or whoever. But he takes a tremendous amount of damage in this movie. Like he gets shot 2 or 3 times.
He does.
He gets his arm busted up in that wreck. His wrists are messed up. His
bone
legs
is popping out. Like so much, but nothing stops him. Nothing. It's like he's incapable of feeling pain too. Like he's just his mind is set on this course of, you know, get this job done, kill whoever gets in my way, and nothing's going to affect me. Like I really want to know about how he was raised. That's what I want to know as like a true crime podcaster.
Yeah, right. There's so many
I want to know who, Anton, who hurt you? Who hurt you? What was your dad like? What was your mom like? I just want to know. Right.
Like there's all those questions. And the thing is, and what I realize is, as someone who listens to a lot of true crime, reads a lot of that, just, you know, I'm into that for the same reasons, is if you ever got him and you ever captured him, he would never tell you. And if you did, you couldn't believe it anyway, because he probably doesn't even know. Like he's just sort of erased it. I
don't know. I think I would believe him, actually. I think what reason does he have to lie to anyone?
Good point.
Everything he does is with purpose, and it's like this it's honest, I guess. So I don't know. I think he would maybe tell you, but I don't know. Definitely no feelings or emotion there. He's just the most terrifying psychopath killer of any movie, really, I've ever seen. Even Freddy Krueger has a sense of humor. Come on.
I mean, he was built to have one, right? Like,
That's
why I say Shakur is much more like in the John Carpenter way of how evil operates and stuff like that. And Deborah Hill would give her credit for that too. But it's very just soulless. You know, like you
soulless.
Say. It's automatic. He's a machine. It's kind of Terminator too. A little bit of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I got a lot of that vibe off of this. And we should say this is set in like 1980. It took me a minute to remember that when I was watching. I was like, "Where's all the friggin' cell phones?" Or like, "Where's the flip phone at least?" Right? And I said, "Oh, wait a minute. And when is?" And I had to go back and look. I was like, "Oh yeah, this is 1980."
That makes sense with all the cars and stuff. They're all old and
it totally makes sense. And where they are too. I don't know if you've ever spent any time in the Permian Basin of West Texas, but and they shot this movie a lot in California, but that's how it looks. Like I've been to Odessa, to Midland, all that area, and it's just miles of nothing for forever.
Desolate.
And then you have these little towns that pop up, and you know, usually former oil towns or farm towns. Things like that. But it's a great setting because it's definitely in a place. It's near the border, you know, because that's going to play a big plot point later. But the way he operates in such an open, wide open space, it's neat because it's like you should be able to see him coming from 100 miles away.
Yeah.
But, you know, Barry Corbin's character has that line later with Belle when he's talking to him about you can't stop what's coming. You can't change the end. And death is coming for all of us, whether we know it, accept it, or realize it at all.
Yeah. Such a big theme in the movie. The death is coming, you know. Unstoppable. And that brings me to the coins, you know, the coin toss. And like at one point in the movie, he's like, this coin has traveled from 1958 until now to get into your hand and tossed, and you get to like decide life or death kind of thing right now. And so death was coming for him based on this coin traveling through time. And that's kind of symbolic there too. I don't know.
Oh, I love that. I love that whole back and forth with the gas station. I think everybody knows the flip it and call it friendo, line. But the whole bit of dialogue there is great because the guy's arguing with him like, well, no, I'm not going to do that.
I know. Yeah. That guy was kind of dumb.
Well, I mean,
that is not what I would have said.
Yeah, but you realize he doesn't know who he's talking to.
He doesn't, but...
And Shiger also realizes this guy doesn't realize what he's talking to, so I'm just going to walk him through it. I'm going to help him through this thing. And when he wins, he's like, okay, heads, like, it's your lucky day. And when he's going to put the quarter away, he said, don't put that in your pocket. That's your lucky quarter. Yeah. But he circles back on that logic and says, like, but it's also just another quarter. Have a good day. Yeah. And he just walks away and it's like...
he's like...
What would you tell your wife when you went home at night? Like... Honey, you'll never believe who walked in the store today.
I mean, I don't even think he had a clue. He was oblivious, but yeah.
Yeah, it's such a strange moment. But that's Shiger's whole thing, and it's what's neat to watch him to work.
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting how he talked about that coin traveling through time to make its way to where it was right now. And I also felt like that's kind of symbolic of Shigur's character as well, like traveling through time to make his way. And I'll talk about that later too, the whole fate thing.
Yeah, absolutely, because it's a big theme here. Next, we got to talk about Llewellyn Moss too, Josh Brolin here, who's such a fun entry point for the audience because... Yeah. You just get the sense that he's just a good old boy and just kind of going through life and, figuring it out as he goes. And he's trying to hunt on his day off and, he misses his shot. But as he's going around, he stumbles across the results of the Mexican standoff.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just thought it was neat the way he just worked his way through the scene and checked on stuff. Yeah.
And you can just tell by the way he is so cautious that Llewellyn has been through some shit.
Yeah, he's been a nom twice, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Like he was so cautious. He knew, that someone could be there still alive waiting for him. He was like, he took cover. He was super, like, you can just tell he's super street smart and stuff. And yeah. I love Llewellyn's character. I think he's really at the heart of it a good person. And that's kind of why, when the man was behind the wheel dying, asking for agua, he didn't. And then it kind of was heavy on his conscience and he filled up that gallon and came back later that night, even though it ended up basically determining his path. Like it screwed him over coming back to give the guy water because we know what happened after that. But
that starts the chase of the movie. But I think that's the thing about him is that he is everyman in this. And the decisions he's made, while they're not morally superior necessarily, they're also not so different than what most of us would do. If you walked up and found a satchel with $2 million in it, I'd look around and go like,
I know, but what a decision. I mean, it ended up that bag of money determined his fate and all of those around him. It was just, you can't blame him for trying.
No, you can't. But the movie tells us he's an honest person, though. When he comes back home and Carla Jean's watching TV and she's like, what you got in the bag? And he's like, bag full of money. And she's like, that'll be the day. It's like, you don't lie to her. And he's just like, and he just says what he says. And I don't know. I love his whole thing. I think he reminds me so much of a lot of men I grew up around who were older than me, but had been in those kind of situations were just working men and they just have a way about them. There's something that it's hard to, put a total pinpoint on it because they're not simple, but they come off like they are, but they're very complex and how smart he is and that he figures out his way around it and all of his hiding places and stuff. It's great.
Like I said, he's a street smart guy. Like he's been through some stuff. Like he knows how to pull it off. And I have to just say, okay, from the desert, he drove home to the Desert Air trailer park. I mean, it's Josh Brolin. Sign me up for his neighbor. I will move to the Desert Air trailer park if my neighbors are going to be like that. I mean, he's pretty hot, even as a like redneck Texas cowboy. I just have to say. I hope he also did. He get an award for this movie?
No, he wasn't nominated for anything. No.
Oh my gosh, he did an amazing job. He was. I thought.
Yeah, I think nowadays, people know him from all of his like Marvel stuff and everything that he's done. You know, which is, I mean, good for him that he's getting to do all of that. But never forget, he's also a really interesting actor who can do a lot of different things outside of his personal life problems and things. He's a fun actor, and he really sells you in this role because, much like Tommy Lee Jones, who we'll talk about in a second, he's able to just sort of disappear in the role that he's playing. And not unlike anybody else in this movie, too. I mean, Javier Bardem's the same way. Yeah. Is they just become the thing they are, and you forget that that's Josh Brolin, that's Tommy Lee Jones I'm looking at. There's just Llewellyn Moss. Yeah. That's what he looks like.
I totally forgot until I remembered that it was Brand from the Goonies.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Right? Of all things.
Remember that the cutoff sweatshirt and the shorts over the sweatpants? Yeah. That's Llewellyn Moss.
There you go.
He's come a long way, baby.
Yeah. And then he got to be Thanos. So, I mean, gosh, he upgraded in life.
Right.
So, but he's so neat to watch him move out. And what I love is, again, he goes to that roadside motel in Del Rio, and he figures out how to hide the money, and he's going to get the room behind it because he knows that the air conditioner will connect to it and all that. He's plotting this through. And when he finally figures out, like, how are these people finding me? How are they getting to me? He works it out in his own head as we're learning there's a tracking device attached into the money. He finds it, and that's when he realizes, like, well, I've gone to another hotel and they found me. And that's one of the best scenes in the last 10 years in movies, where he is at the door, he's waiting to see footprints, and you see Javier Bardem walk in front of it and walk away, unscrew the light bulb, and come back, and he's like, he's got to wait for it. He's waiting for that cattle prod to knock the lock out so he can shoot at him. And that sets off their shootout. But it's the 3 minutes of absolute silence and the quiet intensity that, I mean, Coen brothers are sort of into that thing, but a lot of times they have good music to accent it. This movie is as silent as the desert, and it's absolutely amazing.
And that scene, it was like the most scary. It was the scariest 3 minutes of my life. Like, just that tension and anticipation. You know he's coming, and you see the shadow of his boots under the door. It's so scary. Yeah. But you know what? I was also kind of mad at Llewellyn because I'm like, I think if it were me, I would have taken the money out of that original suitcase and looked through it. I kept thinking, that was so dumb. Why did you not like check it for even just like an ink tag thingy or whatever those things are? Like I was like, why did you not look for that beforehand? But that's like the only complaint
I could only chalk it up to the fact that he had never seen even a stack of money that much in his life.
True.
And probably thought, I'm not taking this out in front of anybody because what if I lose it? What if somebody sees it?
True.
I got enough problems as it is.
Yeah.
And I mean, to his credit, when he's going out to take the water break of the guy, he does get shot in the shoulder with buckshot.
Yeah.
And so he's at home having to pick that out, telling his wife, you need to go to Odessa to your mother's, and it'll be all right. So he's sort of making this up as he goes along. And that's what's so neat about this is Moss's own guilt and fears kind of drive him through this, but he never shows that he's afraid of any of it.
Right. No, he's so calm, cool, collected. Like most people would be panicking, but he like immediately develops a plan and knows exactly what to do. So maybe that's like his military background coming into play then. So I don't know.
I think it's neat too that the way they dress him and the way he's lit, he's always in light colors and stuff like that. And it's such a contrast to Sugar, who's in all black.
Yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
And they're constantly putting him in direct sunlight and direct lights, except for those dark, moments. But even when he's out in the street, he's covered in blood because he gets in that guy's car and then, Sugar shoots him and is all that. He takes an incredible amount of damage too. We should say, if we're doing the Terminator parallel, he's definitely the Michael Biehn of this movie. Like he gets beat to hell and still keeps going.
Takes a licking and keeps on ticking, that guy, really. Yeah. Like that when he's crossing the bridge, the border area. Oh my gosh, he's like basically bleeding out. So, and yeah, I did not, before I knew what was going to happen, I didn't really expect him to make it. And then he wakes up to the band playing for him, and he's like medical.
Yeah, gives him
he needs help.
$100, a bloody $100.
Hey, that is one thing that keeps happening. All the money, if you notice, like all the cash that changes hands is usually covered in blood. So that's kind of a nice little
it's blood money.
bit of symbolism. Yeah. Totally blood money. Yeah, literally and figuratively. Yeah.
I mean, I think what we're to deduce from the standoff of anything was obviously there were buyers for that truckload of drugs, but the sellers were going to gun down the buyers once they got the money. Thus, there was a tracker on it, because why else would you do that?
Right.
And they all shot each other. And so that's how we got to this point. Like, it was a banker making a drug deal, essentially. So he wasn't even there. And and that's what you see working out. And that's what's neat, is that there's people involved in this that are so far removed from the people it's affecting. And there's a lot to say about that too, that, you know, governments and people make a lot of decisions that affect people they never know and they don't think about it and don't care about it. And the war gets waged on the ground while the decisions get made in the tower. And that's I don't know. It's, Cormac McCarthy wasn't really saying anything about that when he wrote it. He wrote, as he put it, he wanted to write a Western horror story. So he kind of did. And this is a different book from a lot of his, in the way that it reels off. And being a true crime podcaster, you really should read it, because it reads like a true crime book.
I will. Really definitely. Yeah. I will.
But it's so neat to watch that unfold and to see that happen, because you see the outworkings of the bigger decisions being made and then what the ripple effects are. And again, you know, the way that they've lit Llewellyn, the way he dresses and all that, it's very much a good versus evil, light versus dark going on the whole time. But what's neat about him and his ending is he gets killed by people he doesn't even know are still on his trail. He thinks it's just this one guy. And that Mexican gang that gets, inadvertently tipped off by the funniest mother-in-law character I've seen since like Mama's Family or something. I don't know what she was doing.
Yeah, that part made me mad too. Like, hello, you're not supposed to tell anyone where we're going.
But in 1980, for a woman that was that age, who grew up in the aughts and through the 20s and everything, she don't care. So
that's true. That's true.
That's a different time. So the fact that we see that work out, and that's his end. And I wanted to ask you what you thought about the fact that we don't see him killed on screen. We just see the aftermath.
I totally have an idea about that. So all through the movie, we think Llewellyn is basically the main character of the story. We think that. But usually if the main character of a story is killed off, it's done in a really grandiose way. Like, the more you love the character, the more they play a role in the film or whatever, the more elaborate the death or whatever. And in this, we don't even get to see it. It feels like an injustice, kind of. But then what I personally think is there's a shift. I think actually Llewellyn wasn't the protagonist. I think it's all about Ed Tom. And so he becomes really the main focus and the protagonist. I think, that's what I think.
Well, you've hit on something there that's exactly right. And Tommy Lee Jones was nominated for Best Actor for this. And the reason is, leading actor. The reason is his character is through the point of view that we're watching all of this. He's the point of view character in the book. He leads off the movie with that narration about, he's been sheriff there since he was 25. Him and his dad were sheriff in different counties at the same time. They were proud of that. And he always appreciated the old timers. He thought you could learn a lot from that. And he has all these dialogues with his younger deputy and Wendell and with, different people around town about how, like, boy, things sure are changing. I don't know if we can deal with this anymore. And you see the old man coming to grips with the fact that the world isn't his anymore and he doesn't know what to do with it.
Yeah, and we start the film with him talking about, the old timers and things like that. And we also end the film with him talking about the previous generations and the dreams he had. And so I really think, he is the protagonist. And you can also see it if you go back and think, because there's like this juxtaposition between him and Shigur, like so many scenes where they're in the exact same, seat or position or reflected in the TV screen. There's the scene where Shigur is drinking the milk from the crime scene or where they were in the trailer. And then, Tommy Lee Jones is drinking the milk. There's so many, similarities that play off of each other. And yeah, you spend most of it thinking, oh, this is a movie about Llewellyn Moss. No, it's really not. It's all about Tommy Lee Jones.
Yeah, I mean, what's neat is he is literally the personification of I'm too old for this shit. Because he sees, the more he sees of these things, and his deputies are like, hey, the DA is going back out to the crime scene. He's like, they're going to find a new body? No, well, I don't think I need to go out there again. Do you? He's like, no, I saw it once. I don't need to see it again. He's over it. And he's trying to come to grips with that. And it really works itself out when he's trying to find Moss, and he finally finds out where he's going to be at that next hotel down in El Paso. And he pulls up just as the Mexicans are shooting out and killing him. Yeah. And he talks to that other sheriff in town, and they talk about like, oh, I don't know about these kids these days and all the drugs and all this going on. And
totally.
And, he's sitting there, and he even says like, I don't think I understand this world anymore.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. He is the old man in No Country for Old Men. He's one of those old men. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and when he goes to see his cousin, great character actor Barry Corbin, who I love and have seen in so many things. You've seen him.
Oh, that house.
Yeah. Right. Well, yeah. The House of Crazy Cat Man or whatever.
Yeah.
But even, you think about that person and kind of what he represents to Bell is he's his sounding board. He's his conscience. He was a lawman himself. He retired, and he says, I hear you're quitting. Your wife tells me you're quitting. And he finally gets around to owning up to it. He said, I'm overmatched against this. And I love what he tells him. He said, we've always been overmatched. He said, since the 1800s, we were overmatched here. He said, it just changes because you can't change what's coming.
No. And they talk about how, lawmen used to not even have to carry guns.
Yeah, Andy Griffith.
People respected them. Yeah.
Yeah. And
they respected their authority, and then times are changing.
Yeah, and people don't. Yeah. But the thing is you say that kind of stuff, and that's an internal dialogue audiences have. We still have that today. It's like, these kids these days, Right. And I think I'm like, 20 years ago I was those kids, and it's the circumstances change, but there's always been violent crime in society. We may hear about it more, know about it more. We're more aware of it
because of the media,
right? We look we look for it more, right? We've become attuned to it. But don't think that in a small town like that everybody at the beauty shop, everybody at the old man coffee club wasn't talking about, did you hear about them old boys got shot up out off Route 44? Yeah, it's terrible.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody's talking about that because the local paper would have been all over it. It's nothing new is what I'm getting at. But
it's nothing new. No. And in fact, it used to be worse in the Wild West.
Right. And that's a whole thing like the Coens is they infuse a lot of like Old Testament philosophy and stuff into theirs. And if you've ever read Ecclesiastes, Solomon has this whole treatise about like there's nothing new under the sun. And it doesn't mean that there's never any new inventions. It's that people are people, and the problems we have are always going to be the same problems.
Yes.
Greed, lust, jealousy, crime. We're
always the same.
Yeah, we've always done those things.
Yeah. Always the same in true crime too. Like every crime, pretty much you can look at money, love or lust or relationships, domestic stuff. It's very rarely random. Everybody's problems are the same across the board. And that's the root of all this, stuff that happens like that, all the bad stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we get into the trouble we get into. And what the friend is telling Bell there, and what he has to come to realize is that, there is no stopping any of this, but there's also an acceptance that comes with it. And he has that dream about his father, and he talks about, the fact that he was dreaming about his father, who he's a lot older than now. When he gets the sense his father died when he was younger. And I've heard my own dad talk about this. His father died. His father was in his late 40s, and my dad's now in his 70s. And he talks about how, I'm nearly double the age that my dad was when he died. And and he talks much like Bell does at the end of this, like, I have a dream about, my dad is just going out in front of me a little bit, and he's built a fire. So I know when I get there, he's just waiting for me. And it's almost like this acceptance of like, I'm old, I'm going to die, but it's okay. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's the ultimate thing here, is everybody sort of accepting their fate. And I know you had notes on fate, so I want to talk about that, because I think that happens right after Carla Jean's scene with Sugar when he's like, call it. And she's like, no, you made up your mind anyway. It doesn't matter what the coin says. And in the book, this is the biggest difference. In the book, she calls heads and it's wrong and he kills her. And so she goes through with it in the book. And I actually like this change better because I think it fits the big metaphor.
Yeah, I agree. Once again, it's the coin. It's the whole fate thing. So it was all fate. Like we said before, he told Llewellyn he was going to kill her and he needed to keep his word because that's part of his quote unquote moral or, set of rules he goes by, his own messed up rules. He said he was going to do it. He's going to do it. He can't not do it because he said he was going to do it. So the flipping of the coin is like this fate thing again, like the coin came to you and to make this decision, but she's like, no, it's not about a coin. You're making this decision and you do not have to do this. And then he's saying kind of chuckles. He's like, everybody says the same thing. You don't have to do this. You don't have to do this. But in his eyes, he absolutely has to do it. And I like how they kept it open-ended, kind of how they don't show it. I mean, Carla Jean is such a pure, beautiful soul. And it just is so, I mean, I guess it's fitting that she's the last one that he kills, I guess. I don't know. She's just such a sweet lady. And then I like how they kept it open-ended and didn't show it, I guess. And then he's, coming out of the house, wiping his bloody boots. We can assume bloody boots. But the real thing that I think is like symbolic of fate. So nothing could stop Anton Chigurh. Nothing. Nobody could stop him. Not guns, not people, not law enforcement, nothing. But the only thing that we see that actually kind of stops him, is this fateful car accident that nobody was expecting. He just randomly gets T-boned in an intersection, and of all the things to stop him, something unplanned and fateful is what did it. So I think, it's all about kind of like the fragility of life, I guess. And he is banged up in that accident. But then like Jason, he just gets out, puts a sling on it and just walks down the road and keeps on trucking.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's the thing is he's still unstoppable. But I think it's neat that accident happens because he takes his eyes off the road. He sees those boys coming behind him on bicycles, and he looks up in the rear view and he's just staring at them. And you're wondering if he's like, what are they doing? Am I going to have to do this?
Yeah.
And that's when he gets hit. And I'm like, see, he's even a victim of the own randomness of life, too. Yeah. And he does everything he can to get out of his own predicament there. It's like, here's, $100 for that shirt. Now you never saw me. He's saying that to people all the time. When he kills Stephen Root in the bank, the accountant is sitting there, behind him. He's like, are you going to shoot me? And he said, that depends. Do you see me? And the guy never answers. So we don't know, but if he's smart, he's like, no.
I think he killed him.
I think he did too, because I don't think that's what he lets.
Who did he not kill?
He didn't kill the gas station guy because of the coin.
That's true.
It's the one he didn't kill, but
because of his rules that came into play. Yeah,
I love his scenes with Woody Harrelson together though too, because that's just a side part. Woody Harrelson comes in and does like 2 days work, but he's a day trader turned bounty hunter, something or whatever. But he's way in over his head. He does go to Moss and he tells him, look, you got to tell me where you hid that money, over the fence or whatever, because if I get that, I can help you. I can save you. Your wife's going to be dead, and that's when Moss really perks up. He's like, okay. So he gives him his card so he can call him at the hotel later. And when he goes there, of course, Chigurh's just coming up right behind him.
Oh my gosh. And you see him walking up the stairs, and then you see, this person off the side to the right. And you think at first I was like, it's a cleaning lady with a mop or something, but God, no, it's him again. Like he's everywhere all at once.
Yeah.
Like he's all knowing. And that's the thing. Like he just shows up everywhere.
Yeah.
He knows everything. There's nothing you can get past him.
No. And he's right there behind him, and he's got that silent shotgun, and he's having that whole discussion in the in the hotel is like, you can just let me go. We walk away. You can have $2 million. And he's like, yeah, that's not going to happen. He said, if you at least admitted, it would be a little more dignity in it. And just like the most lines he gets. And I'm like,
yeah,
wow, this guy is really insane. And Harrelson's the one that has said so many times, like, you do not realize what a psycho this person is. And he even asked me, like, do you realize how crazy you really are? And I love the look on Sugar's face is like, Emma? I don't know, Emma? Like, just, it's like he's confused by it.
Yeah, he got him for a second.
Yeah, he's sitting there doing this, and the phone starts to ring, and Sugar knows, like, that's probably Moss calling you, so he just pulls the trigger. We see Woody Harrelson get shot, but we also don't see it. It's sort of off screen. Like, he just falls over in the chair, and then Sugar, quietly puts the gun down. Phone's just ringing. And he's going to pull it over, going to get it set.
That was so annoying to me.
I was like, pick the damn phone up,
just
man.
pick it up, man.
Yeah. But when he picks it up, and I love that conversation, he's like, you know who this is. And I love what Moss says back to him. He's like, yeah, well, you ain't got to look for me. I'm coming for you. I'm going to make you my special project, And
I love that too.
Yeah, I was like, yes, you go. Like,
I know. And I'm not afraid of you.
You kind of wonder, like, if he had been able to slip the Mexicans that were on his trail, if they had gotten back together, could he have taken him out? Because he got close. He got mighty close at one time.
So close in that street fight. And then I was like, why is there nobody calling 911? Like, it's right in small town USA, a main street. This gunfight
but it's in the middle of the night, and nobody's up.
I know.
Because decent people ain't up at that hour of the night.
Wouldn't they be hearing this?
You would think.
There was a car accident, and then all these guns.
You would think. But apparently not.
I had a question, though. Do you think that Sugar just didn't believe Woody Harrelson's character, that he knew where the money was? Or do you think he just thought, oh, this guy's full of shit?
Oh, no, I think he totally believed him, because he goes and looks for it. He goes and looks for it afterward, because that he's like, okay, now I know where the money is, so I don't need you anymore. His MO was, I'm just going to find out what I need to know from him, and then I'm going to kill this guy because we've crossed paths before and he lived, and you don't get to see me and live. And I think, he was like, yeah, I believe you. And he was just going to let him prattle on and try to let him go, like, at least be decent about it and realize you're about to get shot. And when he did, he's like, okay, fine then. And he just killed him.
I hate that.
It's cold. It's so cold.
So cool. And then that's the scene also where the blood is coming. Yeah. That's a really epic scene right there. And he just nonchalantly puts his feet on the bed, not to get messy. Yeah. He was big about, like, not getting his feet messy, because I guess that's a hazard of the job,
And we didn't even talk about after the fight he has with Moss, when he goes and he blows up the car in front of the pharmacy so that everybody will leave the pharmacy so he can rip it off for all the stuff he needs, and he's washing his leg off in the bathtub and pouring all that chemical on it, and he's never moves, never flinches, and I'm like, this doesn't
bat an eyelash. No,
I was like, this is the Terminator cutting his eye out. I mean, it's the same thing.
Oh yeah. Well, even just the process of putting the flame in the gas tank and the cloth in the gas tank, and like just walks in the store, never even like startles or anything when the explosion happens. He's just cold.
Yeah, methodical. Yeah. I mean, that's the word. And that's the thing about this movie, is how it can be so methodical. I mean, it's 2 hours long, but it never feels like anything is slow, even though it's an incredibly slow movie, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. It goes very fast.
Yeah, it really goes down easy. And I attribute a lot of that to the plot. It's pretty simple. You know what's happening, and they don't need to tell you a lot. And then, you have all these great scenes, and just the use of the quiet and the silence, and it's unnerving is what it is. And the other thing I thought about Sugar when I was watching this, I grew up watching a lot of Westerns, and particularly like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And Lee Van Cleef's character in that movie, Angel Eyes, is the same way as Sugar. He's always wearing black, and I mean, he's always going and bounty hunting people, and they try to buy him off once they realize what's going on. And he said, "But when I get paid for a job, I always finish it." And he shoots people. He just guns them down. And I'm like, the Coens are borrowing from this, whether they'll ever admit to it or not. That movie had a lot to do with the way
big
this guy
influence
was done.
on it.
And I think Cormac McCarthy probably borrowed some of that too. The Shakur's a little different in the book, not so different that like it's noticeable, but I think the way that he's dressed, the way he looks and everything, owes a lot to that Angel Eyes character from, all those movies years ago.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not familiar with that one, but my dad used to watch old Westerns all the time. So, but I kind of tuned him out. But this is more like a Western noir.
Yeah, it's neo-noir Western. I mean, it's true crime horror Western is what this thing is. And what's neat is you watch the rampages that Sugar goes on to get to where he wants to go. And you realize that he gets what he wants. And that's what I want to ask you about this movie that's so, I mean, it seems so bleak in some ways. It's that the bad guys win. He gets the money back. And what you realize is that he was supposed to retrieve that for the bank, but he kind of runs off with it himself. And and
that's a great thing to think about. Yeah. I mean, what is he going to do with this money? Right. Like, is he going to go sit on a beach, get a girlfriend, and drink pina coladas? I don't think so.
No, that doesn't seem to be his thing.
No, but I would love to know more about this character. Like, maybe there's some fan fiction I could read or something like that about Anton Chigurh, because I mean, he's so interesting, but so simple all at the same time, I guess. But I want to know where he walked to after that, limping with the splint on his arm. Like, I want to know where he went. I want to know what happened after that.
I have a theory, and I can't prove this other than just from what I saw in the movie.
Oh, gosh.
The fact that he kills his handler in this, and he kills him because he's mad because he brought all these other people involved in the bounty hunting. But I think he looks at this as kind of a way out too. Like, you know what? With $2 million in 1980, that's a lot. That's a lot of money. He's like, I can just disappear and not have to work for anybody anymore. I don't have to be anybody's tool anymore. And I kind of think Chigurh's whole thing is like, I'm going to go do this and I'm taking that money and I'm gone. And
he's like, I really want to retire in the Hamptons.
You're watching three men in this movie who all have the same goal. They want to retire peacefully. Bell wants to retire. Moss wants to retire in style with his wife. Because he even says, like, you retire from Walmart now, baby.
Wow.
And then Chigurh wants to retire from being the Terminator.
What a great point. I did not get that when I was watching it. But, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Yes. And, the ones who want the money for themselves to spend end up really banged up or dead. And then the sheriff, Tommy Lee Jones, doesn't want the money. He just wants to end all this craziness, and he ends up being able to retire and forget about all of it, I guess. Yeah.
Right. I mean, because you can assume he's done something with the money to take it away from that satchel in between the time that he kills Woody Harrelson, he retrieves it from the Rio Grande, and then Carla Jean's mom has died a few weeks later, and she's, at the funeral there, and it's back at her mom's house, and that's when he goes to kill her because he's got to close the loop. And this is it.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I thought that was so neat. And again, that idea had never occurred to me until I watched it for this review. And I thought, all of these men want the same thing. They just want to retire.
And don't we all want that, really? We kind of all want the same thing, so we can all kind of identify with
But how screwed up is it that, like, death gets to retire and the rest of us just get to die?
But here's the thing. Okay. Yes, he was a hitman. He was the best hitman ever. But was he also maybe a little bit of a serial killer at the same time?
He's a total psychopath.
So, So is he going to retire from killing, or is he just going to retire from the hitman?
He's going to retire from working for other people, is what I'm saying, is that he's taking that money and now he's his own boss. He can do what he wants. And if he's got to kill people along the way, he'll do what he wants, but he's not at the behest of anybody else anymore.
True. You think he'll keep killing for fun?
You wonder, that kind of guy, though, like the fact that he survived that car wreck, I'm like, he's the kind of serial killer that would just die in a random accident, like an icicle would fall on him and go through his head or some random shit like that.
Because you cannot run away from fate.
Right. You can't run away from what's coming. And that's the theme of this movie. And I'm like, even for him, he's walking away, but it's coming for him too, eventually.
I mean, he's not so easy on his body. He's got some stuff going on that's going to shorten his life a little.
Yeah, and that's why the one that Bell, Tommy Lee Jones's character, is the only one I think that ends this movie where he wants to be, but in peace. You know, Moss never got to where he wanted to be. He got cut down in his prime. Chigurh is still limping away. He's got what he wants, but he knows it's coming for him. Bell's the only one that's like, I know death's coming, but that's okay because my dad's gone on before me and he's going to be there when I get there. It's going to be all right for me. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. But is he okay, though? I feel like there's some sense of just sadness and anxiety, though, in that when he's talking to his wife about the dream. I just feel like he's like, I don't know if he is totally at peace. I feel like there's something on his mind.
I interpret it as he's at peace because of the way he says it to her, and he just deadpans and then I woke up.
Yeah, that's
true. And it's just,
and then it goes to black.
Yeah,
that's all there is.
You realize that his father is the most important figure in his life because he starts out talking about him in the opening narration, and the fact that he's having dreams about his father going before him, and it's going to be all right. I got the fire ready for you, son, when you get here. If that's in his own head, God telling him it's going to be fine or whatever he needs to figure that out. That he's made peace with that, and the way he just kind of looks at his wife is like, "No, woke up," just like, "All right."
Yeah,
that I think he's glad to not have to put that shield on anymore, go do that anymore. He can just fiddle around the house or whatever.
Yeah, I think in my head, I think he's got some maybe like PTSD and some unanswered questions from everything he just went through, and but yeah, I could see that he's ready for what's next. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, Kelli, we're at the part of the podcast where it's time to give final thoughts, recommendations, and popcorn ratings. So what are yours for No Country for Old Men?
Oh, man. So after watching it again all these years later, I'm definitely at an extra large with butter and with maybe some of those ranch sprinkles you put on top. I love those. So I'm going to say I'm all in on that. Yeah. Yeah, I loved it. I loved it.
Yeah, I'm with you. This is definitely extra large popcorn territory. It's a modern classic, and if you've seen it once and you're like, okay, I got it, I don't need to go back to it, you owe yourself to revisit this once every couple of years. It's not one to watch all the time, but throw it on in a nice quiet evening. I watched it. I happened to be home alone and was able just to sort of let it absorb and wash over me. And again, it goes down easy and totally worth it. And ranking Coen Brothers films is kind of hard to do. It's like ranking Kubrick films in a lot of ways, but this is definitely one of their best efforts, and
I agree.
It's a fantastic film. So yeah, extra large for me too. I'm going to try this ranch sprinkle business. I hadn't heard about that.
It's like powder, you just sprinkle it on, little flavoring. Yeah, it's very good.
I'm going to have to try that. Well, Kelli, once again, thanks for being a part of the show. Tell folks about True Crime IRL and all the cool stuff you're doing.
So, you can find True Crime IRL on all the platforms, Apple, Spotify, everywhere you get a podcast. True Crime IRL, all one word. Be sure to follow me on Instagram. I'm really active there. True Crime IRL. I'm on all the social media at True Crime IRL. And lots of good stuff coming up.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you. I had fun.
Yeah, been an absolute blast, and I'll co-sign True Crime IRL. Totally worth your time. Great podcast, and Kelli interjects a lot of humor in between a lot of real heinous stories, and that makes it.
I try.
That makes it go down easy. So do recommend that as well, folks. You can follow this show's social media at FilmstripPod on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You'll find announcements about upcoming shows and a link to our Letterboxd page, which has our entire list of reviews, all 300 plus episodes through these years. Go to filmstrippodcast.com. That links to our anchor.fm distribution site, and we're on all your podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, Google. Share the show, and if you can, leave us a positive review. It helps other people find the show. We appreciate the support. So, for Kelli, I'm Jay. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Film Strip.
Thank you for listening to Film Strip. You can find more episodes on our website, filmstrippodcast.com. The Film Strip theme music is produced and performed by Frozen Lake 121. All content used or discussed in these podcast episodes is the property of the respective owners and used under the Fair Use Act, Section 504, C2, Title 17.